surprise. So yeah, so as I said, I'm going to to run the slideshow in my back and speak a little bit because I'm trying to just do it as simple as I can. So as Rachel said, I was born in Israel, in Jerusalem. Actually, I was not raised in Jerusalem, in a suburb of Tel Aviv, Rehovot, and studied in Jerusalem in the Bezalel Academy. I did my bachelor and my master, yes. Yeah, and it was definitely difficult. And in 2012, I moved to Berlin. First, I moved also for residency. This is always the way it starts. What? Sorry? Okay. So, and then I fell in love with the city. I was always wanted to go to Berlin in the sense of history. I'm a history geek. I studied also in university the history of Germany, Jewish history, and queer history. It was a match, win-win. So I'm also, parallel to my art, I'm also teaching and guiding about history in the streets of Berlin. And yeah, and then I stayed there and I had a few exhibitions we're going to talk about. And why I'm mentioning Berlin, because I want to start, I can go way back, but I want to start with Berlin as a starting point, because for me, this is in a way, the place that everything started for me to be more brave with myself and the question I ask myself. So I moved to Berlin as a boy, very gay boy, but a gay boy, and slowly when I went into the city and I get to know the city, I decided to start checking myself and to bring up questions about myself, my identity. And this is something very important to me. I'm usually the way I live my life. I think as a transgender woman, as a transgender person in general, there are many stories, yes? And there are also many stories for artists, yes? And everyone is different. In my case, it was not a decision I made, and then it didn't start intellectual, and then went into emotional, and then physical. I started in a very physical process, meaning a very, very simple way. I started cross-dressing, created a fake character, a female character. Also, it's all very important to say fake, because at the beginning I felt there were two people, and in many ways I'm still thinking about it, I will tell you later. And I just went, on the street of Berlin, dresses as this woman. She didn't have a name, or every time she had another name, I don't remember now, it was 6 years ago. And introduced myself mostly to men. For me, the sexual meetings, it's not just about sex, it also helped me and still helps me to understand my body. Of course, I'm more exposed to violence and I'm more exposed in general, but it was what it was, and it is what it is. And this intercourse with men and those straight men suddenly in my life, that I always try to go away for them. Most of my life as a gay boy, there was people that I didn't want to deal with. Suddenly I found myself during the nights meeting them, going to their houses and trying to understand myself better. And at the same time, I found myself looking at women more than I used to look. And it seems like maybe you will say, okay, what is so different about it? But I was, in a way, and I think I always keep saying, as a trans person, in my case, I always had this experience of outside of my body experience. So I always watched myself as a film, not a good film always, but I realized it, that I was just watching all the time, and when I went inside the film, I was just playing a role, in a way. I don't want to use those born in the wrong body or my true self, because I'm trying to go away from those narratives. But I definitely felt that I was suddenly getting closer and closer into the film, like getting inside the wounds that I tried to hide so many years. And yet, one of the role was, in a way, to see women as, those diva, strong women, very, the way the gay community usually, I think, deal with the idea of female around us. It's like they have to be like, strong than life, over the top, drag queens kind of, but not just a drag queens. You need to be like, to wake up at 6 o'clock to be a drag queen and go to sleep as a drag queen, because this is what we know as women. And I think this is the way, sorry for saying that, but a lot of people from the gay community still see women like this. And I found myself for the first time really looking at women, and really looking at myself at the same time. And what I've seen was not always good for me. I started to see those women that I wish to be like, but at the same time I found myself has a lot of fears. Anxiety started to pop up, like, what does it mean? What does it mean when I'm 40? No, I was 37. Suddenly to transition as an older woman, not very old, but something that I'm missing, the beautiful years, the years of 20 something, that you are flirting with the world. Suddenly, okay, so I'm transitioning into being a woman, definitely maybe a strong woman, but I was obsessed for many years with youth. I think also it's also connected to the gay community, the idea to always be, this in control sexually and also in general. So in a very simple way, the anxiety just popped up, and my way of dealing with anxiety and fears and questions is just to go to the studio. So I went to my small studio in Berlin, and I'm saying small because it's very important, because as you can see behind you and you see here, the works are very big. So I found myself started to paint those women in my fantasy, and created a kind of a community. I think me and Natalie spoke about it a lot, about reaching out to community, and it's definitely something that you can hear a lot of people speak here, like lately we are trying to find our community. And I think me, as someone that tried so many years to find his community or her community, I didn't, and I still didn't find it. And I just created my own community. And those was, in a way, those women that you can see, few of them here. But as you can see, it was not just one layer. It suddenly became few layers of beauty, but also layers of other questions of aging, questions of those women that I still don't understand, I can say. As a painter, as an artist, we not always understand exactly what is in front of us, but I just started to paint all those women, and it was just made me to confront more with myself. So the way I work at the studio is usually like those papers. I use graphite, ink, charcoal, and just hours on my leather with like those small pencils. And at the beginning, I always needed restrictions to my body, so I was always wearing those big dresses, high heels, and jumped as a performance. And in the studio, I fell down a few times. And the idea, I don't know why, again, it's something that I felt that I need to do, so I did it and created those images. And then came one of the most important exhibition. You've seen it at the beginning, and I guess it will come over again. It was in a church. Also, like here, it's not an active church, and not this one, but I will speak about this figure, not this one, the red one, and I fell in love with this church because it's an exhibition space, it's an art space, but what is really interesting is in the east part of Berlin. So at the east part of Berlin, there were communists there, and they just took away the ornaments. Yeah, and what I've really loved about this church is that you still see the leftovers, you still see the traces of those ornaments. And I felt something very connected to the way I see the world and the way I see myself, because it's like I say, it's a naked church and not a nude church, because it was naked, because someone took it away. So, of course, it's not so easy just to decide to do an exhibition and then to do it. So I worked with an organization, and then I did this exhibition. And the exhibition the name was Confessions. The idea was to deal with people, mostly to deal with the idea of confession, the ritual of confession, not a religious confession, the idea that people came and spoke with me while I was there. You've seen a few of the images, it will come. Again, I was sitting there in this church, the drawing was all around me, created a kind of also like a chamber of confessions, and people came and spoke with me and shared confessions that I asked questions about trauma or a body trauma that they had. And the reason I'm talking about this exhibition is Frau L, the woman that I showed you before with the red powder, because I met her before the exhibition, and she's a transsexual woman who, I'm using her definition by the way, transsexual, not everybody likes to use this word transsexual. She did her transition during the 80s in West Berlin, and back then it was a very, very hard process, even more than today, because she needed to go to Morocco. There was a doctor there, Dr. Beron, that he did those surgeries without any medical documents needed. Here, this is the exhibition, and this is the Frau L. I call it Frau L. Frau in German is Miss, so Miss L. And she, what is very interesting about the story, she had regrets about the surgery. And first, of course, it's a different story, because even in our community, the transgender community, we don't speak about regrets. It's something that you should not speak about, definitely because we are trying to approach the outside. So if you say and tell about regrets, it's something that is it's a knockout. It's problematic. But also what she said is something that I took with myself. She said, I'm looking at the mirror every day and I see my decision and my regrets. And I was thinking a lot about it, that again, it's like the church, the naked church, like the idea of confronting your body, experience your body, make a decision, and then regret about it. And somehow I felt that this is the way I see the world, the way I see my drawings, and this is the only way for me to experience life. So I did the portrait of her. Of course, as you can see by yourself, it's not a realistic portrait. I can definitely say it's emotional portraits, expressive portraits or paintings. And actually, her story pushed me to start my medical transition, and I started also to take hormones, to start with my hair removal, laser procedure. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because suddenly I felt my body more, because this is something that people don't think about, definitely if you're not transitioning, that we are in a constant performance. Because we are, everybody can see it, if you're doing this laser thing, all your face is red for at least, 2 days. If you are transitioning with HRT, with hormones, so, if you have masculine features from the beginning, so it's definitely, and you start, dressing as a woman, present yourself as a woman, so this mixed, between the two, so people react to it. So you're going on the train, you know, in New York, Berlin is the same. We use the public transportation. It's not like LA, for example, or maybe in Israel a little bit. That it's very it's a daily confrontation, and people see everything. You know, you see it when you start having boobs. They ask themselves, okay, this woman is, I don't know, 39, and she has a boobs of 14-year-old girl, and this confrontation really took me even more into myself and into my anxiety, and also I found out that actually that I am has a very deep misogyny inside of me, and it's not just, I always keep blaming the gay community, my gay friend, because they always keep telling me, why should you transition, you know, you just can have, you know, celebrate yourself during the weekends, and I'm saying, why should you need all this, even didn't say the word, you know, boobs like this, but actually I am the one who felt like this, because I was hated my body, hated the women that I looked at, and at the same time needed it and wanted it, so I still didn't figure it out. So the years goes by, and those drawings became more and more, let's say, expanded and more bigger, by the way. You can see a lot of them here. And I had those shows in the Israel Museum. It's called Victoria, which you ask yourself, Roey Victoria. So Victoria is the name of my grandmother, and she died 6 years ago. So it's not an exhibition to my grandmother, but she also, you know, my memory is always like for moments. So I remember her like standing in front of the mirror, putting her makeup, lighting a cigarette, and in the age of 95. And you know, I as a boy, I adored her, and I wish to be in a way like her. At the same time, when you transition, you don't want to be a granny. You know, you don't want to be. That's also my fear, to get older as a woman. So I added the name Victoria. I started trying to combine, to understand myself as Roey and Victoria, but I will speak about it more with Rachel. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to show you a 7-minute film that I did with another filmmaker. A filmmaker, I'm not a filmmaker, Zohar Malenik Ezra, which I met because I won a prize, art prize for Anna and Ari Rosenblatt, and they gave me the option to do something else, you know, because I usually do the drawing, performances, and then I said, I actually want to go to another media. I asked myself if I didn't have enough narratives when I started transition, because I looked at the YouTubes and all the narratives that I usually used to see in 6 years ago, it's changed very, very dramatically, by the way. But 6 years ago, it was very, very classical narrative, usually about redemption. You know, I'm born in the wrong body, I'm taking hormones, surgery, and here I am celebrating my life. I'm a beautiful and happy woman. And I felt, okay, I mean, what does it mean? It's not my story. And I'm a person who wants to go deeper, and I want to hear their fears. And I asked, as another transgender, my friend, I said, did you always knew, like 100%, okay, now I'm starting transition? Because I don't have it, there's a days that I'm really not there, And so I decided to take responsibility, and I think it's something very important in our community in general, by the way, like what Natalie does here and in general, because there is a mainstream, even in the art world, to do things like, to be with a gallery, to have a curators, and they can take you and save you and help you to have your career. But also my artistic journey was, I always took responsibility. I do, and I still do, and I did a lot by myself. So anyway, to make it shorter, I asked Zohar to start doing this film. And at the beginning it was documentary, to reach out to other women that might have a story like me. But then we did these 7 minutes that I just confront myself, my body, very straightforward. I told Zoe I want it to be simple as possible. I wish you not to, usually in documentary you see like it's like a little bit far away, you need to look good. And I said, no, just, think about my drawing, he liked my drawing, just show everything. And so I'm going to show it. It's now, as Rachel said, it's part of the Israeli Pavilion, part of Aya Ben-Ron project, Field Hospital X, that curated by Avi Lubin, which actually had yesterday also a lecture in the Metropolitan Museum. And it's still on until the end of the month. So I'm going to show you the film and then another thing, and then we start our conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. Oh, it's in Hebrew, but there are English subtitles, so. אין לכם תחושה שקמתי היום בבוקר ותחושה העיקרית הייתה כמו גוש חמר שהוא קולמי ומוציאים אותו מהניילון וזורקים אותו על הקרש, עץ, לפני שמתחילים לפסל ושומעים את הזה של החיכוך עם הקרש וזה בדיוק זיכך לי את התחושה לגבי הגוף שלי. את כביכול צריכה להחליט איך לפסל או מאיפה להתחיל לדחוף, אבל בעצם בתור אמנית את יודעת טוב מאוד מה את רוצה, אבל את עומדת מול הגוף הזה ואת לא יודעת מאיפה לדחוף. לקח לי הרבה מאוד שנים בכלל להיות קשורה לגוף שלי. אני עדיין לא קשורה לגוף שלי, אבל הרבה שנים פשוט התעלמתי לחלוטין מהגוף. הייתי ילד שדאג להיות נערי, ילד מול גברים, ולא התייחסתי לגוף שלי. ובשנתיים האחרונות התחלתי קודם כל עם הפנים. זה קטע, בעצם הדברים הראשונים שהתחלתי לעשות בתהליך שינוי זה הורדת שיער פנים בלייזר, הזקן, השפם, השערות בצדדים. בעצם התחלתי הרבה עם מייקאפ. אני תמיד אהבתי את זה, זה מתחבר לי לציור, ובעצם התחלתי לעצב את הפנים שלי, לצייר את הפנים שלי. התחלתי לאהוב את מה שאני רואה מול המראה, את הפנים עצמם. ערכתי שיער, ופתאום למדתי להעריך את הריסים שלי, ריסים ארוכים, שהרבה אנשים חולמות עליהם. אז יש לי איזה יתרון כלפי נשים אמיתיות. השפתיים שהן קצת יותר מלאות תשוקה, עסיסיות שאפשר להשתמש בהן. אבל הפנים התחילו בעצם להיות מאוד כלי, אבל הגוף, משהו מתחת לפנים, המשיך להיות ועדיין תקוע. פשוט לא נגעתי בו. ואני עדיין נמצאת במקום של הגיל נעורים הזה, של הגיל 14, שנער ונערה נראים אותו דבר. זה שטוח, רזים. זה מחבר אותי שהרבה שנים בעצם הייתי אנורקטית, ובעצם אני חושבת שאנורקסיה זה דבר מאוד 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 עמוק, כי הוא לא מתעסק באוכל, הוא מתעסק בשליטה על הגוף. ושליטה על הגוף זה מה שכולנו רוצים, והאנורקסים הולכים עם זה פשוט הרבה יותר רחוק בגיל מאוד צעיר, שזה קריטי. אני גם דפקתי את הגוף שלי, כי עשיתי את זה בגיל 14, וזה גיל שהגוף מתפתח, ובעצם לדעת הרופאים אני דפקתי את ההתפתחות של השרירים, כי לא סיפקתי להם מזון. אני חושבת שהיה לי משהו שלא רוצה לגדול, לא רוצה זהות. ופשוט התחלתי להוריד בכמויות אוכל בצורה קיצונית. ומה שאני אומרת שזה סוג של שליטה, אז אני מרגישה שזה צורך עד היום שיש לי לשלוט. והידיעה שאני תמיד אמרתי לעצמי, שלא משנה מה יקרה, אם יש לי אפשרות לשלוט במשהו, זה בכמה אני אוכל. כי הנה השגתי משהו בחיים שלי, יש לי יכולת לשלוט בנראות של הגוף שלי. נתקעתי בגיל נעורים הזה, שחושב שהוא יכול לשלוט בגוף של עצמו, ובעצם הוא תקע את עצמו. אני עדיין אותו נער/נערה שלא התפתחה לאף מקום. אין לה ציצים. אני לא מחוברת יותר מדי לאיבר מין של זכרי שלי, של הזין. הוא לא ברור לי. הוא משמש אותי להנאה מינית בלבד. לגמור. אני מפנטזת על פות, על איבר מין נשי. אבל בעצם לא מסוגלת לעשות את זה. אז אם אני חוזרת לגוש חמר הזה, אז הגוש חמר הזה נמצא כבר, אני בת 38, 20 ו-24 שנים. ותוהה אם הגיע הזמן פשוט לתקוף אותו עם אגרופים, לעצב אותו. כי די, אין זמן. אני לגמרי תקועה שם, חושבת שהזמן ימשיך לפעול לטובתי. אבל לראשונה הרופאים אומרים לי גם שאם אני רוצה לעשות איזשהו שינוי, יש גבול לשינוי. הגוף לא יגיב להורמונים באיזשהו גיל. זה אולי צריך להיות פתטי באיזושהי צורה. מישהי שלא החליטה איפה היא, לוליטה כזאת, אבל היא לא לוליטה באמת, כי מתחילים לראות שאני לא לוליטה. כמו שאמרתי, הגוש חמר הזה שתקוע לו בעולם. כן, אז זהו, לאש. So, this film, in a way, was just the beginning. So, me and Zohar, we had a very good relationship in a way that we think the same. And we found out that we want to expand it to a feature. Yes, I'm just a little bit crazy, because every time I'm saying, okay, you should go to the studio, do some small paintings, and be a little bit more commercial, and I'm like, going into these huge projects, and actually we did it with no money, just like we still don't have, but we are now about to premiere it in it will be in the coming few months in one of the big festivals. I'm not allowed to say more than this right now. So without saying a lot, I want to show you a little bit of it. And it is about, it's a feature. I mean, actually the way I say it, it's a theater play, performance that became a film because it's about me. It's not my biography. And it's based on me and one night in Berlin. In a way, my journey when I meet few people, mostly men, and this sexual, physical, emotional dialogue with them. And the peak moment in the film is a sexual meeting with a straight man that escalated into violence. And it starts with a German actress, my kind of mother. She's a very dominant mother, and go on. And there's no dialogues, just monologues. So she has a monologue. My father, so-called, there has a monologue. I don't speak all the whole film. And for us it was actually experiment and experience, because it's something that I don't see a lot in movie today. Like, it's more about observation. I think there is even a term for it in the 70s, observational films, cinema. So it's definitely not easy to watch, but it's as a lot with my drawings also. So I'm going to show you the trailer and a bit of it, and then we're going to get into the conversation that I'm definitely excited about. So this is the trailer. By the way, the name is Third Body. And again, I did it with Zohar Malenik Ezra, the filmmaker. This was the trailer, very dramatic, but I want to show you a part, like 5 minutes. Sorry. Okay. I will show you a part of the. Yes. Sorry. This is not the film. I'm not used to Mac, sorry. It's like I have a PC. But just jumped. maybe the lights on. Feel so exposed. I'm definitely, I don't know if to say excited, I'm totally stressed about this film because it's a media that I never did before, and it's also going to be like it's a different audience because it's festivals, cinema, and film festivals. So yeah, it's a little bit more expanded. And of course, as you saw a little bit, I'm definitely out there. And yeah, we'll see. And I guess now it's the right time to get into our conversation, which for me, as Rachel said, feel free to interrupt, to ask questions, because I had a talk a year ago here, and I feel very different right now because I feel that actually I want to be more vulnerable. I want to hear you, and of course the conversation that I had with Rachel a few weeks ago really opened my mind, and so feel free to say whatever you want.
It's a bit challenging to start after watching that trailer or that part of the film, and I saw a little bit more than you all saw this evening. One of the things that I've been talking to Roey Victoria about is how at first I was very, very uncomfortable about the possibility of this talk, because I felt like somehow I needed to know more, to have more in common with Roey Victoria. And then I realized as we kept talking, we actually have a lot in common. And I think that resides in that zone that we're calling femininity or being a woman, and the ways in which we walk through life and what we experience as a result of that, and the social constructions around femininity. But I did want to start by speaking to the violence and those few moments. I think many women have experienced a certain kind of sexual violence, but what we're speaking to here is specifically violence against trans women. And so I wanted to speak more directly to that violence. We know that it's common. We know that it includes police violence, intimate partner violence. We know that because of that violence that trans people are further marginalized. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit. One of the things that I love about working in an international residency is the way I can sit with artists and who come from different places with different backgrounds and live in different countries with different customs and also different laws and different ways of being recognized or criminalized. And we can always kind of bring it back to our contemporary moment. And as many of us know here, there is an epidemic of violence against trans women in the United States, and in particular against trans Black women. So I want to refer to a quote that I recently heard at a assembly that A Blade of Grass organized recently around normativity, and the many iterations of ways in which we can combat this spectrum of normativity as it's filtered down through capitalist society. So activist, filmmaker, and writer Tourmaline spoke to the very being and existence of Black trans women in particular as embodying an everyday act of rebellion. And I'd love to hear more from you, Roey Victoria, about how your lived experience and your work both, I think, embody this lived act of rebellion in the everyday.
Yeah, so maybe it's good to start maybe with a little bit of maybe more formal. Like there are many trans women that being murdered and exposed to violence. As Rachel said, mostly women of color, Black women, if we not need to be politically correct. Definitely a lot here. Maybe here you hear more about it, but definitely in South America, in Brazil, all over. and of course in Europe also. And most of those events happens when we have no choice, because just to put it in context, I am privileged in the sense that I come from a protective family. They love me, they support my decisions. It's not a rich family, it's a working class, but at least they are there for me. I earn my money from art and teaching, and definitely, as you all sit here, the transition in a way is integrated into my daily job, whatever we call it, in the studio. But almost 60% of the transgender community don't have this privilege, and the process, the journey is very, very expensive. In the sense of, if you have health insurance, okay, it's the hormone therapy, but there is so much more. If you wish to have other surgeries, plastic surgeries, and again, if people come from a really harsh background, so they just need to support themselves. So they are more exposed, and then a lot of the women, mostly trans women, I guess also trans men, needed to go into sex work, and which I have no problem with the sex work. Just the idea that generally women in sex work are very, very exposed to violence, and the idea, and this is very important to me, it's also you saw it in the film, the problem with trans women that we are exposed to those men that are attracted to us, but they don't accept themselves for doing that. And it's not they are gays. I mean, they think they are gays because they are attracted to, a woman with a dick. No, they're straight men, bisexual, whatever they are. I don't care about the definition. But they attracted to another kind of woman, and this is us. It's a spectrum with all kind of women. We expanded the definition of what is it being a woman. There's many, many different stories, as I said. So those men who are attracted to it, which is okay, because as you can see in the film, and I can tell you for sure, I'm also attracted to this, but the idea, the moment they are there, and in the sexual moment, they very confused and under anxiety. I'm not trying to understand them, I'm just trying to go deeper, and then it can really, really switch to become violent. I don't want to go deeper. We all know how is it in the sexual experience. You don't think, and then after you finish, you start thinking and realize what you're doing, and then most of those women are exposed to those men who say, okay, there is a woman who used to be a boy or is whatever in front of me, and what does it say about me? So this is maybe to try to explain it, although I was exposed to violence, but I'm still here, so I'm not aggressive, very aggressive, but the question, sorry,
you also spoke to your need to be with straight men as a way to transition you through the transition. And so what I'm asking is that in coming back to this validity that is needed from exactly those people who commit the harm to you, I'm trying to parse through that a little bit.
So it's a very important point, and we talked about it. So in many weird way, the validity of being a woman sometimes, at least I can speak about myself, I don't want you to see me as a speaker of a community, because there's so many different people. I needed, as I said, to feel it in those sexual intercourses, like to feel accepted as a woman from those men. And sometimes the first time you really feel as a woman. Yes, I'm in a relationship, in an open relationship, and we started as a gay couple, but I guess we are still a gay couple, but I needed to go to be with mostly straight men, and because they, in a way, in many beautiful ways, by the way, also see me as a woman, and sometimes the society, or most of the time, society don't see me as a woman, and those very crucial and emotional moments, it's make you feel very confused, because at the same time it can go into the other way around. And just to remember that the people who go against us now, or maybe this is the second part of what I said at the beginning, mostly, and you cannot disconnect it from the fact that it's mostly cis straight men that has problem with all this visibility that we started to have lately. And people keep saying, and I hear it all the time, wow, you have so many out there in the art world, in the fashion world, and it seems everything is going so good, and there's so much visibility. Well, it's not. It's the opposite. Because as much as we gain visibility, we also get the backlash. And now it's really the time that we feel it the most. Because I guess suddenly, I always keep saying that those men, and also women, by the way, who used to see me back then, and they say, okay, maybe it's just a feminine gay guy, and even in Berlin, but it's a very open-minded city, in New York, it's okay, whatever. And suddenly they recognize, okay, this is actually a transgender woman, because we saw a film yesterday about it. And actually we are more exposed to it, because those, and I think it's really related to what happens in general with women in general, because suddenly at the moment we are asking to gain more respect and power, there are many, many people who don't want to give it to us. So, and we keep forgetting it. And I guess here you felt it's definitely in the US, so suddenly this change, and of course, you know who. And so it's definitely very confusing in many ways. I just want to say that this movie definitely speaks about the violent, and also, I guess, maybe the drawings. But in so many ways, I don't see the movie also like an educational movie, or let's give violent visibility, although it's very, very important. I think what I'm trying to say, and that's something that maybe it's an opportunity to say, the movie actually started to understand the both sides, because many people who saw the part with Matthias, with the man, they actually felt more connected to him than me. Because he's dealing with himself, and you see him at the end of this scene that he's crying, and also a question that we try to deal with are who is actually dominant there and who is submissive there, in a way, in a very deep way, because it seems like I am the victim, but actually, you need to see all the movie, but it just seems like I really needed it. Maybe it's to your questions, because as I said at the beginning, maybe it's something very exposed to say, that I don't see violence or sexual violence as something very, superficial. I see it something as also, to be weird to say, safe zone sometimes. Because maybe I grew up to it. I was many years in the S&M scene, so I can speak a lot about it. I don't think it's the moment, but it's definitely I'm trying and we are trying in this movie, and although in drawings to ask more questions about those moments, not just to say, okay, those men, da da da. And of course, it's important, yes, but yeah.
I watched the film a few times. The first, or the snippet, and the first time, of course, was much harder. And there was a moment where I thought, this is S&M, this is about role-playing. And then it became clear that it was not, that it was in fact his identity that was being confronted, that you actually, yes, that you weren't the victim, that you were actually quite in charge there at the possible expense of your safety. So what you're saying is this, that there is a fundamental difference between, I guess, the desire to be seen and the desire to be watched. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. Also, in terms of a certain performativity about the rebellious act of the everyday, is it different in the places in which you've lived? And to what extent have the conditions of the places in which you've lived actually caused you to leave, and then you go back? There seems to be this, that there's a migration that's connected to your transforming into the different layers of your life, and then you go back. And there's both desire and confusion, and I know that's a very long-winded kind of like piling together of themes, but I feel like they all feed into it. It's something about migration.
I want to start with the second part of the question. So, definitely I come from from Israel originally, and Tel Aviv, I guess it's very, I don't know if I can say safe, but it's definitely like in New York in a way. There is visibility for trans women, although it's really changed in the last 5 years, because when I grew up, there was like 2 characters that I knew about. One is, maybe you know her, Dana International. She's a singer, and she won the Eurovision, how do you say it? Like Euro Contest, and in 1998, I think. And it's definitely, she's over the top, and I think most of the people know her from Europe, but less in the US. She was a big name in Europe. And another one that she was a cross-dresser, Zalman Shoshi, which was actually a way of people saying, in a bad way, because when I was a child and people used to call me because I was a very feminine boy, you're Zalman Shoshi, that's the name. So I asked my mother, who is Zalman Shoshi? And she said, you don't want to be Zalman Shoshi. I said, who is Zalman Shoshi? You don't want to be Zalman Shoshi. She didn't say. So I went, I was 13. I went to Tel Aviv because I didn't grow up in Tel Aviv. And there was like an archive because there was no internet when I was 13. So, and I looked at the newspaper, and then I saw that Zalman Shoshi is a cross-dresser sex worker. And so this was the 2 figures when I grew up. So, and now we have a little bit more, but it's still a lot of my friends worked as sex workers in Tel Aviv and also in Berlin. In Berlin also, I can speak about it hours, but also there is a tendency to think that it's very open, but actually there is no money in Berlin, so there is a lot of migrations from East Europe. So I have a huge community that come from East Europe and work as sex workers because there is no other option. But to go even deeper, the idea of immigration, again, I think it's connected to what I said that I always spoke with Natalie about community, and I spoke about it in another talk about it may be connected to the idea of the one, because I think most of my life, and definitely the last 10 years, I always looked for one answer, one person, and one definition. And because I was very jealous about all those transgender women who said, I'm now celebrating my life, I feel one, I feel me, because I don't. And I never been. And the idea, for many years I was really, really like sad, I can say, about the fact that I don't find the one. I remember also in art school, I was like, if I want to be a painter, I come from an art school that it was very masculine, but also very minimalistic in the way that my teachers were usually used to teach us, about it's called delut hachomer in Hebrew. It means minimalistic art, definitely not painting, definitely not figurative painting, not to speak about expression, and I try to find myself there, and also I think you see in the movie also to find the moment, that you are being accepted, that moment that you that you celebrate yourself, the moment that you being embracing yourself, and I never able to find it. And because of that, I'm deconstructing everything. And I think also if you speak about the drawings, it's that was the energy, and it's still the energy behind those drawings, because it's always trying to find the one iconic woman that I wish to be. And maybe she will be the last one that I will paint, because I always keep saying, at the moment I will have nothing to say with my art, I will stop doing art because there is no reason. And it's maybe a cliche, but it's my need. I need those women, I need those painting around me. I still trying to find that painting, and I think it's connected to the idea of immigration, because also it happened the same, because when I moved to Berlin, first I was very disappointed from Israel. I was part of the huge demonstrations in 2011. We failed, definitely. Nothing happened, even worse. I'm speaking a lot about it lately also with people here, because always you want to talk about the new city that you're moving to. This is the place, because Berlin is not like this, and then New York is like this, and this is the place. And I think every immigrant feel it, that the idea that you are moving because you want a better place, and it's better than the other place. And I think we are the first generation and we have a lot, and mostly artists, that move between cities. You can see it here, New York, LA, Berlin. I don't think Tel Aviv is part of the game because we are very tiny, but definitely people from Tel Aviv is moving to Europe. I don't think people moving to Tel Aviv. And you always want to feel, the essence of this is the place that I will stay. This is where I want to stay. This is where I want to have my community, to have my family. Family in all kind of ways, because I don't have children, but I definitely want to feel the sense of family. And it's always disappointments, always. In Berlin, in New York, and this in between, I think it's an energy, maybe I can say energy, that keep driving me in a way, because I think I spoke about it yesterday with Natalie, that I also, when I came here, because I don't have any transgender women, any friends that are transgender women, and in general I don't have a lot of friends, of transgender friends, and ask yourself why, because I'm amazing. Why? And so actually before I came here, I said that this is maybe the time to be more vulnerable and to reach out, to go to even meet up groups and to say, I need, friends that have the same experience like me. Because I was maybe too proud to admit it in Berlin. And I didn't find. I find here and there nice people. There's one there, Alex. Let's see. But it's and then I told Natalie yesterday that maybe I am the one who first I'm my own community, and also I am the energy. I am the starting point, and which I didn't realize it. Because I remember in art school, when I go to art school, I was sure that there is going to be a mentor, an artist, like that I will be, like a father, he will teach me, and then I will go against him through the years, because this, you murder your own father. But we came to Betzalel Academy, there's Noah that was also with me in the first year. Immediately they're telling you, kill us. Before we know who you are, and they kill us at the same time, because when they tell you kill us, it means that there is no one. So it's something that I'm definitely deal with, and I cannot say that I still found it, the idea, because I'm still the idea of immigration for me is still like the need of finding the right place, the last one, and not. I know a lot of people saying, we are in between, or even in art, interdisciplinary and blah blah blah, and I'm not there in a way, so I'm still like a believer in many ways. Okay.
But the migrations are about desire as well, and agency. And necessity. We've been talking a lot about visibility and aging as women. And I wanted to quote Yardan Stern in his essay, Moving the Binary. He says, quote, "Another fear reflected in Heifetz's drawings is that of getting old. She acknowledges feelings of misogyny and a slight horror at the sight of older women, so she draws them." And quoting you, "I'm stressed by the fact that I'm undergoing an accelerated maturation process. I actually never had my youth as a girl. I started my femininity at the age of 38. It's rather psychotic." End of quote. To say that women's ways of addressing visibility are psychotic is a really light way of putting it, because there are so many factors, of course, that contribute to our sense of visibility. And for aging women in particular, we talked about your grandma, we talked about my mom. She's always saying, "Oh, I hate getting old, I hate getting old. All of a sudden you're invisible." So I'd love to go there for a little bit. Again, this goes back to the desire of being visible, and then constantly wanting that recognition from the people who are really effing with us, right? And we're like pushing back these different kind of forms of normativity, but somehow we always want that validity again. What is that about? Because I think that's something where we found a lot of connection.
Yeah, this is really my weakness in a way, because definitely the need of visibility and approaching invisibility, first as a woman above 40, there are, I guess, women around here that are above 40, above 50, and definitely, it's a fact that you become invisible in some places, definitely the art scene. And if I want to talk about myself, because getting closer to your own authenticity and your own body, and I don't want to say the real truth, but myself, and then to lose it so fast, to be invisible, or to be not to be able to celebrate my beauty, because it's definitely one of the most important of being a woman. You can, if I didn't want to be, a beautiful woman, so why, or to be a woman, or to look like a woman, so why should I transition? Although there are people who transition, or trans women who don't need the aesthetic things, which is okay. It's not my case. And also another aspect, I'm pointing there about Alex, because she runs a group or organization for transgender older women, and which is really, really, there is no space, no safe space and no space at all in our community, because those people who were fighting, in the 70s and the 80s, or even before, and I am actually can even speak here because of them, and they are totally invisible. Totally invisible. In the sense of not just being in a workplace and not to be seen, and also like in the sense of surviving, I met few of the groups, and few of them, they don't, economically they don't really survive, and also the idea of our community, but this is another story, gay community and LGBT community definitely not appreciate the old generation, which you will say, what? I mean, for me, one of the most important, also someone that like history, is to look back before looking ahead. But I guess it's not so common. So, but if I want to go deeper to the idea of aging, I guess I was always dealing, and maybe it's not the aging thing, maybe also death, the losing of control, and I think the movie also speaks about it. And I talked in the first movie about being, suffering from anorexia. And the idea, I was thinking a lot if to say about the anorexia thing, because it's become like, it's a little bit common to speak about it, but I'm trying also in this subject to say it's not about the idea of the visibility of people who suffer from anorexia. It's the idea, what is it about? Because I'm still suffering from it. I'm not, you see me? I always keep laughing about the fear. I'm saying there, I'm thin, like I have this, I'm not, but I still think about food as a way of controlling myself and controlling my body. I never really healed from that, which is okay, because I don't think you can heal from anorexia, but you can survive. And the idea of controlling, something that I deal all my life, and definitely with my art, and I think the idea of aging is mostly the idea of losing it, losing this balance, of not having control, and it's less about the wrinkles and the aesthetic, which of course it's important, and definitely we see more and more older women, visible lately, but I ask myself, is it getting better for you? No, because I definitely understand that it's a matter of controlling. I was saying in the film, I was a boy that used the idea of flirting. I was flirting with men. I never trusted myself as a person, that people loves me because who I am. I don't know why, that's what happened. And suddenly to lose this option, like one of my experiences with the gay community, that suddenly I'm invisible, I'm going into gay bars, and nobody I am the faggot, like the friend of the gay, no, it's not me. You used to like me, you used to want to have sex with me, and suddenly I'm invisible. So it's something, okay, so you can say it's something very, very mandatory in my existence, to be and not to be at the same time, to lose it, to lose this essence of being present in a room, so maybe this is the issue about aging, and mostly the idea that there is not enough. We were thinking at the beginning to do a about aging in art and in community, but also there's not, we didn't see a lot of artists that deal with the subject. I'm talking about aging of women. So this is another aspect.
Sorry, I was rolling my eyes at the technology level. I wonder if we could go back a little bit, speaking of going back to when you were, or memories of being a young boy and also a gay man, and how through the eyes of a transgender woman has that affected the way that you see women in the everyday, particularly in their treatment by or in the gaze of cis male. Have you recognized, I think we were talking about it, that there was in fact a certain kind of privilege that you had, or you were talking about how you were recognizing also certain misogyny that may have been there. So how has it changed? How has your vision of how women are responded to on the street, or accessed on the street, or violated on the street? Is there a new awareness there, for lack of a better word, understanding?
Yeah, I guess I wish to say something like, that I found the strength and the beauty, but definitely I'm still, in German there's a very, very good word for that, Sehnsucht. I don't know what it is. Like, it's a longing for something that never happened. So it's not longing, and it's not something nostalgic. It's like in between. It's very German to have one word to have everything in it. So in a way, I'm still, waiting for this moment, as I said, and I'm definitely, let's say it very simple. I went from here to here. As a gay man, without any, not to offend anyone, but to be a gay man today, a white gay man, let's say, it's definitely a privilege. I'm not proud to say it. To be a transgender woman, and definitely not in my case, transgender woman of color, it's not, and it's the opposite. I'm the only thing that I'm starting to accept myself as Victoria, that maybe she has Roey inside of her, and the moment I started to think like this, that Victoria, this woman, whatever she is, can have Roey inside of her, the moment I started to balance between the two, and not to have Victoria and Roey, if it makes sense, to be non-binary, no, to be binary, but in the binary I have also Roey inside of her, the boy. Then I started to look at other women and to accept it a little bit more. Yeah, and this is, I think, a starting point for me, because I realized that I have this, that I'm a very, very white, black in the way I think, although it doesn't seem like it, but I'm very binary in the sense of, what does it mean actually, an older woman, and definitely as a boy, as a gay boy, you're like older is like, I don't know, everyone is older than you, what does it mean? Also like I hope I will have the strength to go deeper into those questions, because it's also something like, even when we're speaking here, it's also like aging. What does it mean, aging? What are we talking about actually? If it's the matter of the skin and losing, like I think one of the important talks I had with a friend of mine, the idea of losing the need of sex. And she told me at the beginning that it's actually, she feels the freedom now because she doesn't need it anymore. Oh wait, that's what she said at least. And it's also a question, like if you don't need the sex, it means that you are more free than others, or the opposite, or you're out of the game. You know, what does it mean to be out of the game? Because what I know in my game is always a sexual game. It's very mandatory in my story. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I get into the...
The stories of many women are a part of your work. You meet with women, you have conversations, you meet with transgender women throughout in the many different places that you have done residencies and that you travel to, that you move to, and their stories are in your work. Your work is a kind of combination of living women, women from the past lived stories, and autobiography. There's something about that process that informs your work in combination with your exhibitions, the way that you, I'm trying to get to something slightly different here, the way that you create these large-scale scrolls on very raw paper and they hit the ground. They're not meant to be framed, or one could say contained, right, by traditional art displays. You also use your scrolls in your work often to create these architectural spaces within art constructs, sometimes a semicircle or a circle, or sometimes pathways that people walk through. And then you have conversations, sometimes like this, and sometimes you perform, and you also invite people to have dialogues, one-on-one dialogues with you in these spaces. I feel like in many ways your work is almost screaming for something that is a bit closer to social practice, because you also create these safe spaces, if you will, and also kind of rebellious spaces. Is that something you're moving towards?
No, definitely. I think the Confession exhibition, there's another exhibition that I even didn't show, was in a hairdresser salon in Tel Aviv in 2011 with a curator from Israel, Sally Haftel, which was a very interesting idea because I was sitting in a hairdresser salon in a suburb of Tel Aviv, even not in Tel Aviv, and in a neighborhood that most of the women don't work, they don't have a day job, so all the day they're in the hairdresser salon, in the salon. And I was drawing there, took filming, photographs, and it was, and also you can say social practice, but it's it definitely was not exhibition. It was just 4 weeks of experience. So definitely yes, and I mean I don't think that I even need to say something more than the way you described it very beautifully. The idea that I hope that my drawings are asking from people to be less protected in the sense of a dialogue. And because they do it, or I do it. By the way, I'm really not connected to the drawing in many ways, because in many ways I cannot even watch them anymore. But I hear from other people about my drawings, which is really weird. I appreciate them by other people. I don't see them anymore. I see like white paper, like right now. But again, when I'm growing up, I understand that they are the way I present it, unframed. The paper itself, that I use paper, that I use drawing, we didn't speak about it, but at the end, the decision to use drawing is not just because I know how to draw. Maybe I even don't know how to draw, but I taught myself to draw. I think drawing show everything, because face it, there is not so many artists who deal with just drawing. You see a lot of people who do paintings and then drawing, installation and then drawing, sculpture and then drawing, and although usually it's very also small, So things that are for granted suddenly became like very important in many ways. And the idea that drawing for me, because it's layers of drawing, and it's hours of hours, and you see everything on the drawing because you see the mistakes I did. I like to erase a lot. Also, I said about Fael that she looks at the mirror to see her decision and regrets. This is the way also I deal with my drawing. I cannot draw, I guess there are painters here that to paint white areas. So a lot of people who do drawing, and if you see other people masterpiece of drawing, you see that when it's white, it's just someone that they, in advance, they didn't use the pencil. And I can't. All the white spot I have at the body in my drawings are, I erased the pencil. And again, it seems like something, okay, well, why is it important? But it is. So I hope that they are, and also in another fact, that idea that I can go with those drawing everywhere in my tube. It used to be like, okay, you can go and you can, it's like less expensive, but also I understand lately that it's also the idea of immigration. I can go everywhere with those drawings, they are here, and the idea that Natalie gave me the option to use this corner, and to have them there, it's also not for granted because it's a shared space. And I actually didn't ask the other artists, how is it to see my drawing every day? I guess it's a little bit annoying, I think. I think I will feel like this, like to see all the time. And they are very striking, so it's not like just a drawing. So maybe I will say this in one sentence. I spoke with Avi Lubin yesterday in his talk and said that I realized that we used to think that honesty is something that you don't need to mention, but suddenly honesty in our world became an advocate. If you just say something honest or do something honest, it's already radical. And for me, it's very sad, by the way, because I don't think it's enough to be just honest in your art. And I think you can like it or hate my works. They are honest. It's not enough. But unfortunately, the world that we are living in is definitely forgot this idea of honesty. And this is something very crucial. Yeah.
Shall we open it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there are questions. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions or just wants to say something?